the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And for those of you in the audience this evening, we welcome you. There are copies of the agenda on the back table, along with listening devices if you require them, and we would encourage you to sign in the back as well. Members present this evening are Council Members Gearbaugh, CO, Rice, Lesh, Harmount, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and Mayor Morrow. From City staff, we have the City Manager, City Clerk, DPW Director, Community Development Director, and Police Chief. Is there a motion at this time to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments?
So moved.
As submitted, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Second.
Seconded by Harmount. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we'll proceed to the first public comment period. This public comment period will be limited to agenda items only. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments on agenda items, either discussion items or enumerated action items? And you may simply come forward to the podium whenever you are ready. You will be limited to 3 minutes. We welcome your comments.
Hello, my name is Jessica Bierstill. My partner Steve and I live at 238 South Ann Arbor Street. We are requesting the City Council review sections 94 and 96 of the Saline Code of Ordinances related to the discharge of unpolluted water to determine if City Council must approve all requests to connect to a natural outlet. To provide some background, in January of this year, we contracted to have work done on our basement, including the installation of a backup sump pump because of frequent power outages at our home. With the battery backup system, the contractor said they would extend and bury a sump pump discharge line away from the structure. When we moved into the house in 2021, the sump pump discharged directly into the flower bed in the front yard. Our contractor submitted an application to the Building and Engineering Department on February 7th with a drawing showing the sump pump discharge line going 20 feet out from our house into the yard. The permit was issued on March 4th with the drawing of the sump pump discharge line as well as the verbiage in the contract regarding the placement of the line. On March 14th, our contractor started work on the basement installing the backup sump pump and discharge line. The plumbing inspector came on the same day and told us that he was failing the inspection because the discharge needed to go to the city storm system unless our contractor could provide documentation that it would be unreasonable to do so. On March 22nd, our contractor emailed the building inspector photos showing our large front yard with multiple trees and a 5-foot 6-inch drop to the storm sewer system. The contractor advised that this change would add an additional $9,000 to the cost of the work being done, almost doubling the total cost for the project. We were notified by our contractor that the building inspector said that we would still need to connect to the stormwater system. I communicated with several people, including the plumbing inspector, the building inspector, the community development director, and the city engineer, who were unable to provide a reason for the need to connect to the storm system other than that it is required by the ordinance. The current ordinance states that stormwater and all other unpolluted drainage shall be discharged into such sewers as are specifically designated as storm sewers or to a natural outlet approved by the City Council. This ordinance is from 1968, prior to the creation of the U.S. EPA and the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. Michigan Eagle's residential sump pump discharge guidance for Michigan residents lists discharge of sump pump water to the ground in an area where it can infiltrate as the preferred method for managing sump pump discharge. Eagle does not recommend sump pump water be sent directly to lakes, rivers, streams, and wetlands due to risk of pollution. In addition, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, Land and Water Management Division Stormwater Management Guidebook states infiltration trenches and dry wells may be implemented for very small drainage areas, such as a single residence, a parking lot, or a commercial building.
Thank you, Jessica.
Okay.
Appreciate it. And as I indicated too last week, that item, sump pump regulations, is the last enumerated item under the discussion portion of the agenda. We will get to it later tonight. Appreciate your remarks. Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council friends. My name is Chang Ming Fan, local residents. I have several related issues with the agenda today. For example, the potholes and also appointment of the board members. Can I talk now or after?
If you're speaking specifically to appointments or the annual pothole program, you may speak now, but of course, your remarks will need to be focused on those two issues.
Well, then the first issue related with potholes, which is the traffic, and our chief right here, and the bottleneck related with the with the potholes. So that's something, if you want me to talk, I can talk later, but let's get back to the appointment of the board or commission. I have been waiting to get back to me of my application for the art committee or commission, and also as the environment or climate committee, I like to contribute it whatever I can, be just visitors for the meeting or any other volunteers, but I haven't get back the answer yet. I've been told that background check. So why take this long? And if there's something you and I can talk, and I think my background is not excellent, although I did pass through all of this check and work for the federal government for 2020 census. As the Chinese American, I'm honored to do that. Now, I like to do something similar for this Saline City and the committee. By the way, I'd like to, do I have 30 seconds?
You have 1 minute and 10 seconds.
Oh, I can talk forever. I really appreciate that as the Chinese American, and I'm so honored, so lucky, and just really appreciate from this, everybody in Saline worked so hard to maintain this beautiful city. Volunteerism is the best of the nation, what I feel. So therefore, we should expand it and also continue the heritage, many generations. And now is challenge time. Environmental issue is so severe and jeopardize everything. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank for our scientist, which is Lech, last name, Lech. Right. And I want to offer you information, which is LIP, laser-induced, which is the graphite, HIG. That is so good to create the new capacity which we can use for the SALT initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheng-Ming. Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items this evening?
I have some.
Please, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is James W. Murray. I'm a lawyer. I represent GOTS Transit Mix. Paul Raitzel is here. Please introduce yourself.
Paul Raitzel from GOTS Transit Mix.
A couple comments, and these relate to the South Ann Arbor Street truck traffic agenda item. So GOTS has been in business since 1957 at the same location, and the route that it currently has been taking has gone on for 2 to 3 years. The restriction on the weight is really affecting GOTS' ability to transport its perishable items. And this restriction recently brought the weight that was permitted from 10 axles at 6,000, 5 ton,
an axle,
down to a current gross vehicle weight of only 10,000 pounds. The significance of that is that even a pickup truck carrying or pulling a trailer would exceed the weight on this particular 2-block area. And so apparently this restriction came as a surprise to my client. And looking, and I'm not fully informed of all the streets here in Saline, but what I would ask is what makes this particular stretch of road so unique that we have to limit the weight down to that? Because if that restriction would prevent GOTS from using that route, the alternative route, one of them is physically impossible because the trucks can't make a roundabout. Which area is that?
That'd be at Moon and Bemis, the roundabout. We can't make that turn.
The truck physically can't do
We've
it.
had to have records pull us off the roundabout.
And the alternative route would be so costly that it would seriously financially cripple the business. What route is
So
that?
the route from Mylan would be 2 miles for me to get to the highway, and then 23 to 12 all the way through town. So if I want to go to Clinton, Manchester, now it's an hour ride. I have a perishable load that has a 90-minute shelf life.
And so, for these reasons, I guess we would ask, when did that restriction pass, as part of our question comment, and whether or not you would consider an exemption for the GOTS vehicles for that 2-block restricted route.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, appreciate it. And that item is enumerated under the discussion portion of the agenda, so we will get to it later this evening. Appreciate your remarks, though. Are there any additional citizen comments on agenda items? You'll have 3 minutes.
Mary Hess, former council member for about 20 years or plus. A gentleman was up here talking about vacancies on boards. I had mentioned it before the meeting, but since he spoke, I would like also to say that I notice that the mayor many times puts, please put your application in. We need help on boards and commissions. I think I put mine on 4 years ago, and we have had discussion on my not being appointed. And I think that the council should be aware of how many people have put in their application, and if they hopefully get a copy of it. And it's a council decision opposed to a mayor's decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess, but as a reminder, you're on multiple boards currently, and we appreciate your continued service and involvement. Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items? There appear to be none. Then we will transition to the one and only presentation, which is the annual pothole repair program. DPW Director Searles.
Hello, everyone. So we're gonna talk about potholes, the necessary little trick that we have all the time, little work that never goes away. Real quick, before we even start, I just want to give council how we program the pothole patching. The complaint list is, we gather it from emails, phone calls, or our citizen reporting tool. Those are always kept. When we have time and crew availability and product availability, we get the asphalt or we get the cold patch. We send the crews out. We take that list, we hit the ones that are on that list, and then we try to stay on a street circuit, because we can put, let's say, 3 tons down in 3 days, or it can take us 3 days to put 1 ton down if we go and chase all the potholes. We'll always have potholes, but we try to keep them as manageable as possible. So first, this slide is talking about, it seems comical, but how do the potholes get there? For the most part, it's almost completely related to water, moisture infiltrating the road surface. It gets underneath, gets into the road bed, freeze-thaw cycle, expansion, contraction. You see by the pothole, once the asphalt's raised, it doesn't lower when the ground settles, and then the cars drive over and it breaks it up. 2 different techniques, hot mix asphalt, that's our preferred method, and cold patch is our necessary evil of the winter. You get hot mix when the asphalt plants are open. When they close, you don't get it. We also have to pay attention to what mix design the plant is running. They don't always have something suitable for patching. With the hot mix, it takes a little bit more skill, does a heck of a lot longer lasting job, costs a little bit more, but it's a very worth it trade-off from the cold patch. But again, you can't always get it. Cold patch, that you can see this guy in the slides holding it by hand, it's not hot. The materials are all in one. You can put it down hot or cold, but it doesn't have to be it's not weather dependent on when you can get it. You can get it year round. A lot of places call this throw and go. It really is that simple. You put it in, you kind of pack it down and move on. That's it. Very susceptible to reforming a pothole. Sometimes as soon as it snows and we salt, and then we drive by and we scrape, and then it's gone and the pothole is opened back up again. But we try to keep it safe for the cars. We don't want damage on the cars. I know that we've been talking a lot about asset management. You see in these pictures, and the only reason I put this slide in is once the concrete's gone so far, we're not really able to do anything but kind of patch it. And in that bottom, in the replacement, that one, like that would be what a pothole looks like just before it's a pothole. When it still looks like this, there's not really anything that I can do unless I start excavating, right? Bringing out a machine and tearing up what's there and repouring. We do at times do larger area patches. That's our answer to these type of things, is an actual patch where we cut it, we compact the material, put the tack down, and then put asphalt in, level it, roll it. The thing with the potholes and asset management, and I probably have the slides a little bit out of order, and I apologize for that. There's no return from that, right? It's not like a seal coat. It's not like a micro surface chip seal. It's not like a mill and overlay. Those dollars aren't going to make the road any better. They just make it a little bit safer. And the annual investment, it's hard to find all the data right now, but we're gonna get it, because I had to go back through monthly reports to see what days we were actually out patching. Potholes are not unique to Michigan. I wanted to let everyone on council know that we are ranked first in pothole complaints in the country. I know Lansing is still working on sustainable funding, and we thank the governor for the 2 huge one-time contributions out of the state's fund balance into road maintenance. That's been helpful. But one-time funding isn't enough. We got to look at it. I believe the last time the funding mechanism for the roads was calculated was 1991. We all know how much more fuel-efficient cars have gotten since then. How do we break the cycle? Asset management. I want to point out, as we spent a lot of dollars at the same time in the last 4 or 5 years, you can see two spikes. If you turn your head sideways and cross your eyes, you can see 2 spikes in spending, but those were total reconstruction of roads. During that time, we spent a lot of dollars, but our PACER rating, which that's how we put a value on the road life, actually has declined. This year, we're doing a lot of light dollar investment in a lot of our local roads, and we're touching a lot of them. We've got crack joint sealing going on, and we have some sealing with microsurface going on this year. I do know the county was pretty impressed with our cities. They did mention us in their long-range plan for asset management, road asset management, and we were kind of featured in there. I do believe that we're going to be doing a presentation, potentially a presentation in August on where we were, where we're at, and where we're going with asset management related to roads. Man, that was fast. Questions?
No, it's good. A couple, and then I'll start to my right with, Councilmember Lesh, and end tonight with Councilmember Harmont. So DPW crews are in the process of completing the spring pothole filling initiative. When do you anticipate we will have worked our way through the city in its totality?
So, Mayor, I should have pointed out, I apologize. We patch 12 to 15 times a year. We try to get it every month or more if we can. But I don't ever want to say we're done, because there's always going to be potholes. Obviously, spring is worse. Spring is always worse. This year actually wasn't as bad as a lot of springs, but every time we salt, we do add a artificial freeze thaw cycle. So no, we go as we can.
Okay. Just to your point, that it seems the most advantageous time and the most impactful time to do pothole filling is at the end of the winter season, when the frost laws are lifted.
Yes.
When potholes and deficiencies in our roads are clearly visible, and sending crews out there with either a cold mix or a hot mix can make a pretty significant difference in the quality of our roads, at least for a finite period of time.
Yeah, yes, and Mayor, our strategy would be use up all the cold patch we have left in the anticipation of the batch plants being open.
Okay.
And then transition into asphalt.
So let me ask the question in a slightly different way. So residents, business owners, property owners can expect to see crews out for at least the next couple of weeks, weather dependent, of course.
I do not have anyone doing potholes right now, Mayor. I
Okay.
don't have it scheduled this week. I'm hoping that I can get some next week.
Okay, yep, I would like to see that be a priority for sure. And I suspect that sentiment is shared by my council colleagues. Is there anything that can be done in the future, looking to 2025 and beyond, to allocate the appropriate resources or manage staff time more effectively to expedite a spring pothole filling initiative earlier than what occurred this year?
I never miss a month, so I don't really know how to answer that, Mayor. We, at least once a month, we patch.
Okay.
So I don't know how to,
Well, I'm thinking of my street or my area, my geographic region in particular. And there's some decent streets, and then there's some streets that are in relatively poor quality. And I'm speaking of Russell, McKay, Lewis, Mills, Hollywood, Highland, et cetera. Unless I've missed something, and I'm pretty observant, it's been probably a good 2 months since some of those streets have been hit.
I'm sure you're right, because
Okay.
we had a limited tonnage that we put down before the grass started growing, so we didn't get another batch.
Okay.
We,
Let me-
we burned up 6 tons. and-
Well,
and
so,
the
well, then
roads
that
were
gets back to my original question then. Do we need to allocate or make sure there's more money in the budget to get that type of material in 2025, 2026, and beyond?
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's it for me at the moment. Mr. Lesh, any questions regarding pothole filling program?
None at this time.
Mr. Seal?
Yes, sir, I have one. You said Michigan ranks as the #1 state for potholes?
Yes.
Other than the weather, what contributes to that?
Per capita road funding and per axle weights.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. Just a couple really quick questions. So I want to make sure that I understood. Are you currently still using cold patch?
We'll always have to use it because you can't get any other material in the winter. Well, we don't have any more on the ground, no.
Okay.
For this season, no.
So are we transitioning now to hot mix?
Yes,
So then we just sort of put the cold, so anything that's being filled now is using hot mix?
yes.
Okay, thank you
Yep.
for that.
We
clarification.
always prefer the hot mix.
Okay. So talking about cold patch, is there a way that we put a little bit more effort into packing it down? Will that help it? Because, I mean, I watch, you shovel it in, you sort of tap it down, and I mean, theoretically, the cars are going to push it down, but basically, it seems like they just get caught up in their treads and it's just walking away.
Yeah, we could pack it all day long and it'd still be soft.
And, okay,
Yeah, it doesn't harden. That's why you're able to use it in the winter.
okay. Thank you for that clarification. At one point, the city owned like patch repair equipment, like bigger scale equipment. Do we still
We do.
have that?
We still do our own patches. I mean, you saw a few out here on Harris. We still do patches, yes.
Okay. Because like, that's what I'm trying to wonder, like, at what point does a pothole just become better off being a patch? Like, and I'll use Bennett Street as an example. I mean, you could lose a fill-in in some of those potholes traveling down that road right now. So wondering, would it be better to do a bigger area than filling holes?
I don't know how council feels, but cold patch and hot patch, there's no return on that. And we could spend $50,000 on it, but we're going to, eventually, this road is beyond anything that's going to save it. It needs to be completely redone and programmed into a capital full remove and replace.
Right. Well, and that kind of goes back to my next question, which is that some of these areas, these streets that we're talking about are roads that we know are beyond their useful life. So how do we get them up higher on the priority list to be replaced?
More money?
Okay,
A lot more money?
Okay,
Well, I mean, we've used all of our money, or everything that we have budgeted for roads, every dollar we get in is used.
Right.
We don't have anything like saved.
I guess I'm just trying to understand, do we need to reprioritize our budget and put more money into our roads, into some of those roads that either can have more of a long-term patch or just get further up on the replacements, or, just understanding what we can do, because I understand what you're saying about patching is just sort of throwing money away. You're just literally putting it into a hole. But we've got to make our roads better too in the meantime.
Right. And if we do every worst road first, our road network overall condition will decline. We will spend all of the money and it will still decline. If we extend the life of everything to the maximum through multiple treatments on the road like we're doing this summer, we're going to see that pacer rating increase. We're going to have to kind of like hold on a little bit while we get caught up. But
Right.
worst first is not in asphalt management is not where people's been successful.
Okay, because I guess I'm just trying to figure out, because I'll be honest, I was very excited today. They were crack sealing my street.
Yes.
And they did a great job. It's a cool process to watch. But I watched them crack seal around a big-ass pothole. And I was like, so what exactly did that serve? I mean, the pothole's still going to get bigger. And so understanding, is the cart coming before the horse on some of these things? Or how do you fix that situation?
I really feel that we're moving in a direction that's going to improve the road network by applying treatments at the right time, as opposed to going after every completely maximum expense road. If we go with maximum expense road, our road funding dollars are $500,000 from there, $500,000. What are we getting? $1.8 million a year. I can burn that up in one road, remove and replace, or I can hit 24% of all the roads and extend the lives and start recouping and redirecting. And I know we're going to have potholes. But I will try my best to get every resource that I can to keep it passable so that it's easier to tolerate while we rebuild the pacer rating of our overall road network.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, Director Searles, I'm the one that put this on the agenda.
Yes.
And this has been a hot topic for me for the last, 5 years or more. And it seems this last 4 or 5 months, you've made statements about that you were going to send out crews to repair and patch holes, and it did not occur.
Okay.
So that's one of my components that I'm making it clear tonight, that I felt that at times that when I've made this concern, I've had to express it to the city manager, and that's when the actions have happened. And in fact, when I put this item on the agenda, a number of items on the reporting tool all of a sudden triggered a number of responses back to me. And so my concern is, when we report these potholes, I believe there's a liability at the point in time we identify these, that we are now liable for those, and should any damage or anything happen to a car, it's our issue, because the state of Michigan has made it quite clear in times when that's occurred. But I would defer to our city manager for that.
So there is a reasonable expectation to repair, and that is what the city does by implementing a pothole program. There would have to be significant negligence on the part of someone to ignore damage or to go out of their way to not repair the situation, to really expose us to a great deal of liability. It's, I think, more just though about a public sentiment. If someone reports something, they want to see that it's being taken care of in a timely manner. And to that end, I think we've all acknowledged that we don't feel the existing reporting tool is the most effective, either from an internal side, overall processing that, getting into our work order system, or from the user's side in terms of what you see and how information comes back to you.
Which raises another concern I think you've just identified. And from my perspective, a number of these holes, and I've even spoken with the mayor and fellow council members, we've reported numbers of holes and issues across the city that just haven't been addressed. I mean, there's 2 on North Ann Arbor Street right now that I've had the owner of Hartman Insurance identify it. I've had other people. And it's driven over by crews day after day after day. So I'm hoping that we have this see something, do something approach. And I understand you have a process and whatever you're trying to do forward, but I'm feeling that this is an issue that somehow just has this aspect of, we have a culture of that, well, if we can't replace the road, it's not worth doing anything until we replace the road. And I've heard that statement made to other individuals. I want to make sure that changes, and that's one of my concerns. And I know we have to fix our roads, and we do have some major roads that have failed, but some of these other roads are not that old and need to be protected. And as we were trying to repair things, and I thought our process is to catch things before they fail. So just like we were doing the seal cracking and some of those items, I think that's a great approach. But again, having to wait 4 or 5 months to see a hole that's getting bigger and bigger has a concern for me. And I think that is an issue of, seems like we have plenty of time to do some other opportunities or things, or mow grass or things like that during the summer. But even this past winter, when we had sufficient weather aspects that we could have stepped up to do some of that, it didn't occur. So I'm just presenting my observations and what I'm saying.
I appreciate that. I just want you to know that without fail, I'm not exaggerating, we do patch potholes. We go out at least once a month and do it. We don't get them all, we can't. I don't have the resources to spend weeks and weeks with 2 guys doing potholes. I don't have the resources.
I just want to make sure the ones that are identified are actually taken care of, and they're not. So
Okay.
just to be clear, when those things are being reported, they aren't necessarily being resolved.
Okay.
And that is, as the managers mentioned, the tool, but this tool has been in place for over 2 years now. So I just feel that that's a gap that we're seeing happening, and it's in your area, so I need to identify it there to make sure that this is being addressed.
Excellent.
Can I jump on one thing real quick? And to a point that, I don't want to belabor this, Director Searles, but Mr. Gearbaugh made mention of 2 potholes on, that would be South Ann Arbor Street between the block of Michigan Ave and McKay. So he's indicated that he's reported it. I know that I've reported it. I suspect several residents and business owners have also reported it. And to the point that my colleague made, we've got crews and individuals who drive over those every day. I mean, to me, it seems pretty clear that ought to be a priority, and it shouldn't take weeks to mitigate those issues.
Okay.
So I just want to be respectful but clear.
Yeah.
I share that concern as well.
Okay, thank you.
Please continue.
And just lastly, as you mentioned, weight is a contributing factor to the destruction of these. So whatever we can do to control and maintain the weight that's coming onto our roads is clearly an indicator to help protect and preserve our roads, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rice.
So we've sort of addressed what I was going to point out to this, is that there's a failure in our citizen reporting tool, which we've all discussed. But I think what we need to do in the intermediate, before we come up with a solution for that, is prioritize. I think you mentioned, Mr. Searles, emails, phone calls, citizen tool, like they're coming at you from all directions. And maybe there needs to be some sort of scale of priority. If you've heard of it more than once, maybe that needs to be investigated. So just a little extra something until we get that tool or our system to a better point. And I think that's kind of what my colleagues are getting at is yes, you're going out and filling potholes, but are they the priority potholes that have been identified through these mechanisms?
Well, I will say, I'm not going to blame the reporting tool. If my crews didn't hit Ann Arbor Street on those potholes multiple times being reported, I do know we had 19 reported potholes at the time we asked for this presentation. They're still not patched. So I'm not going to blame the reporting tool. What I'd like to do one day in the very near future is convert over, once we get the work order system debugged, then it sits with a ping on me. I can't escape it. It always pings me. So, but it's not ready yet. When it is ready, I'll bring it out to council, and I think that would be our best reporting tool. But Ann Arbor Street getting missed is not the reporting tool.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Councilmember Harmount.
I just want to get a little bit of clarification to make sure I understand. So what's our method of identifying the status of the urgency you showed 3 different stages, the preliminary, like if we can get to it, maybe we can extend and then there's the reactionary where we're fixing the pothole with. So what's our method right now on identifying the status on a regular basis of what all the roads in the Saline are?
Two factors, cores, which tell you that's a small drilled hole, and it tells you what the asphalt profile is, the aggregate profile, what kind of organics are in it, and the pacer, which counts it's kind of like a system of crack counting, and it'll tell you what the where the road is in the life cycle.
And what is this, there's cores that are implanted all over our roads that are going to report to a tool, or?
Oh, no,
Okay, so how are we identifying, like, if I were to say on Monroe Street right now, what's the condition of X patch? How are we able to?
I'll go and get you the pacer.
I mean, I guess my point is that I know that there's a lot of different innovative methods out there, and I was just wondering what we were doing. Like, you know, if getting to those earlier is something that would help us mitigate, you know, more extensive potholes, are we able to catch all of the potholes before they become a reactionary situation? Do we have a means to do that?
I will say through asset management on the roads and working with all of the available treatments that we've brought to council about traffic asset management, if we employ that as opposed to every worst first, I think we'll get there and we'll improve. And I think our city will be able to decline the number of potholes and increase the overall road rating. As much as we've invested in the roads in the last 5 years, we've had a decline in the overall road condition. We're just trying to work differently with the right fix at the right time, and we can't invest, we just don't have enough money to fix everything.
I guess my question is, what is our method of identifying, like, all the streets? Like, are we, you know, are we putting on the garbage trucks, we have a camera or a laser, or what are we doing to identify all of the status of our roads? Are we just driving them on a regular basis? What specific is the process?
All of our roads have been, they get every 2 years, we go through and we do the pacer rating, and we employed cores with that in the recent past, the last couple of years. So we know what the road bed is on top of how many cracks and what the surface looks like. It's the industry standard for best practices in managing roads is to rate what you have. All of our roads are rated.
But we're rating them once or twice a year, and that
Every 2 years.
Okay, but there's no way to do it on a consistent basis. Like, we couldn't put cameras on or some sort of equipment that would do that.
I don't know that we need that frequency to program the road investment. I don't think we need that short of a frequency.
Okay,
Can I have city manager jump in? She'd like to make a comment as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for council's edification and for the public's too, I would encourage people to review the Transportation Asset Management Plan that we adopted earlier this year. That has a lot more detail about the methodology for the rating system that Director Searles is referencing, and also the methodology behind this shift from going after the worst first to identifying the right fix at the right time. And really what that plan spells out is if we follow the recommendations of that third-party consultant, we can expect to see an overall improvement to the system. Unfortunately, we're in those growing pain years right now, right? We're switching from chasing the problem to planning for the problem, and that's going to mean for the next few years at least, it's still going to look a little rough.
Are there also, and then my other understanding is that the salt is impacting the roads. Okay, so is there any other type of material that we could use that would have less of an impact? I've also heard that there's certain types of materials that can incorporate bacteria, or a certain type of material that would help the pH level of the material that be less susceptible to salt. Is there any angle that we go to for either of those? Because it does sound like we do have some pretty significant issues with potholes in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the salt does not damage asphalt like it does concrete. Our roads are asphalt. Okay. But what we do is every time we de-ice the roads, we're creating a freeze and thaw, right? It was frozen, now it's thawed, and then it freezes again, and then every time we come back. So we give it not only the nature, Mother Nature's freeze thaws, we add freeze thaws every time we salt the roads. We do use brine, we do use liquid de-icer, and we do mix it to try and maximize how long it stays on the road and how effective it is instead of just throwing salt like crazy.
There's no other innovative means that other communities are using that are different, that are having better results?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Mr. Shirles, one last comment, and I know I've mentioned this to you publicly, privately. I think I've said it to the city engineer as well. As we develop we implement, a more comprehensive, impactful, successful strategy to maintain our assets, specifically our roads, I hope that we don't lose sight of outsourcing the patching projects that we have done in the past decade. And so I would cite as examples, while there are some rough sections of Bennett Street today, it is significantly better after the subsequent to the 2017 patching that was spearheaded by your predecessor, Mr. Fordyce. I'd also note that the patching that was done on North Maple Road, north of the post office adjacent to the manufactured home, mobile home park, improved the quality of that road, and had we not had to upsize the West Belt sewer line, we could have probably gotten 2 or 3 more years out of that solution, that product. So I think there's a lot of roads that we could improve with that treatment, that approach, and I think it's pretty cost effective, and it also mitigates or reduces the amount of pothole filling that's needed on those streets because you've enacted a more permanent solution, quote unquote.
In the repeat areas.
Yes. So just something to keep on your radar.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate your time this evening. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for discussion.
Move as submitted.
Moved by CO to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, was that Lesh? Thank you, Chuck. I'll get you on the next one, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to the public hearing. This is in regards to the Fire Special Assessment District, First motion will be a motion to open the public hearing, affording the public an opportunity to speak to this issue at 7:42.
So moved.
Moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this issue this evening? Please.
Kimberly Ashby, good evening. Just a couple of questions. I am newer to the city. I try to read my mail and understand. First question is this a normal every year thing or not? There was no purpose stated other than fire protection and no amount given, even in terms of amount per thousands of dollars of value of a property. So when I read these things, I hope to see a reason and I hope to see an amount. So I'm hoping to get those questions answered tonight.
Very good. Thank you, Kimberly. Are there any additional questions or comments? Is there a motion to close?
So moved.
Moved by Gearboss to close the public hearing at 7:43. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded again by Dillon. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Public hearing is now closed. City Manager O'Toole, to the petitioner's question, I can answer the first part. You may have the exact numbers more readily available than I do. Kimberly, the fire special assessment has been an option for the city of Saline for more than 3 decades now. It was used extensively in the mid-90s. Then we transitioned and took our portion of the fire budget out of our general fund for many years. I believe this is the 3rd year now in a row that we are using the fire special assessment to fund the city's portion of this is the 3rd year that the city has used this fire special assessment to fund our portion of the fire budget. And I would note, in addition to that, the assessment, which is limited to 1 mil, does not even generate all that we are required to provide the Saline Fire Department to continue the outstanding service that entity provides to the broader Saline community. City Manager O'Toole, anything you'd like to add to that?
Just that, yes, you can very easily figure out what the impact of the assessment is on your taxes. One, it's the same amount that it was last year, 1 mil, and you can just take that 1 times your assessed value divided by 1,000. That works out to give you the estimated impact. And certainly anyone is welcome. If you want to know your specific impact, just reach out to us. Our finance department is happy to answer that question.
I think the important point, though, is there's not a significant change from the previous fiscal year. It was 1 mil in 2023. It'll be 1 mil this year in 2024. Okay. And that concluded the public hearing, excuse me. We now have a motion to approve or adopt or not to approve resolution number 2485, special assessment for fire protection 2024-2025.
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
the resolution has an error on it. It says May 6, 2023, so I wanted to note that in the motion.
That'll be changed without objection. Who was the mover on that? Was it Rice who wanted to approve and adopt?
It's Jen.
Or Harmont?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Seconded by CO. Okay. City Manager O'Toole, do you care to make any additional comments for the public record this evening?
No, I think that we just covered it.
Okay. Any additional questions from the dais, Mr. Gearbaugh?
And this may be a question you can't answer easily, but how much has our fire millage gone, I mean, the expense of our fire department gone up in the last 3 to 5 years?
Don't quote me, but I believe in 3 years ago it was about 34%, then 7, then 12. So 34.
More than 50%,
Yeah.
an increase in our fire
Yep.
protection. So
Which is why 3 years ago we re-implemented the assessment, because the general fund could no longer cover the full contribution cost.
And those were all related to new incremental costs such as firemen full-time and also to their benefits and everything else.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mostly the additional personnel, yes.
Correct.
Yep. Added an additional firefighter to every shift. Additional questions or comments from the dais? Then we have a motion on the floor moved by Harmont, seconded by CO to approve and to adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 24-87, license agreement to use City Row at 345 Detroit Street. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Community Development Director Harrington and to approve or not to approve the revocable license and access agreement to use public alley adjacent to 345 Detroit Street.
Move to acknowledge.
Okay, moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge, and that was seconded by Dillon. Mr. Harrington, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. So 345 Detroit Street is just a block that way. It's definitely an interesting property if you had the opportunity to look at the materials. What is currently next to them on the eastern side of their house is like a grass field. At one point, it was supposed to be platted as an alley. The city technically owns it as a roadway, more or less. The only thing notable about it on our end is that our storm sewer, and we have a manhole on it as well, sorry, a storm sewer cover on it as well. A prospective homeowner would like to put a garage in the back of the house. There's currently no garage or driveway for the house because the lot is taken up by the house as it is now. So they came to the city and requested that they be able to put a driveway on our property essentially to access what they would like to put a garage in the back of their home. Through some working with the city manager, the engineer, our city attorney, we were able to come up with sort of a compromise that would allow them to put a 12-foot wide gravel driveway to access the rear of their lot rather than driving over our grass, which they would technically have the right to do because of how it's platted. And this way they could legally access their garage that they would like to build and thus increase the value of the home and thus the assessed value for the city, if that matters. And it seems relatively straightforward to us. We went back and forth with the applicant a couple of times and with our attorney. The license as it's written gives the city the absolute right to revoke at the cost of the applicant to remove the driveway. So it protects the city, it provides functionality for a resident, and I think just makes sense going forward. There's no harm looking from our engineering department about how this would be constructed and maintained.
Very good. Are there questions for the Community Development Director? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just a couple. As you mentioned on this, that you suggested that they could put in a gravel sidewalk, but as we discussed a little earlier before this meeting, and as I look at it, there appears to be partially a sidewalk on it that doesn't necessarily should have ever been put on there, plus also the asphalt on there. How are we going to deal with that? That's one question. And two, have we required, or is there a formal survey that identifies specifically where the lot lines are for that property? Because I'm very concerned that if we don't identify properly where the storm sewer or whatever is on there, then we may have an issue.
Yeah, so we have the original assessor's plat. We have the attached exhibits as part of the agreement as well. The note where that is and isn't. As for your first question related to the nub road and the walkway that goes out to the nub of the road, I'm not exactly sure when that was placed. I don't know how relevant it really is. It obviously has not caused harm in its existence. Granted, I don't think most of us at this table knew that this was technically city-owned property. At least I didn't. So as it relates to the existing sidewalk and nub, I think the maintenance of that going forward would be what it's always been.
Okay, and then, I mean, for me, and having had discussions with the city manager, when we enter in these type of agreements, generally they happen to be, after years, people forget about them, or they become issues and concerns that nobody recalls. I know this is a licensing agreement, but under my understanding, there's potentially of a garage being built at some point in the future, or whatever else, and I still feel that we may be creating some kind of precedent. If you can explain how this licensing would not create that type of situation, and at any point, we'll be able to revert this, because my biggest concern is should development occur on the Thorncrest property at any point that they need an access, I do not want to jeopardize that perspective for this community.
So first and foremost, if development occurred on the Thorncrest property and the city pulled an access drive through where that currently is, again, it's an alleyway. It's not just free city land, essentially. It has a specific deeded purpose. That the homeowner would have their accomplished result of then having a formal roadway that extends to the back of their property, and thus they would need the gravel drive, which is one perspective to look at it at. The other one is that we would treat it like a right-of-way permit when we process the ultimate construction of the drive, because it is operating in a right-of-way. It's how we would collect a fee for it that we've previously worked out with the person who had us create the agreement. And then as well, it would exist in our permitting system in perpetuity. I would add any sort of condition to it as well, to a garage permit that may be established to reference the license agreement. So we'd have it saved in multiple places, attached to all relevant and subsequent documents to the home, to the garage permit, to the ultimate construction of the gravel drive as well, so that city staff in the future would be aware of what existed.
And when you just mentioned deed of purpose, is that on the alleyway itself?
So it goes back to the original assessor's plat. And I see another thing, does it get recorded? It does not get recorded with a deed, so.
But it doesn't mean there's some other potential return of that property to some other owner at some point?
No, so the city claims it as an alley. I would have to consult more with the specific, our land use, or our land attorney on that specific aspect of it, but from my understanding.
Platting goes back decades or even.
It's city's property, but its purpose is an alleyway, if that makes sense. So from my understanding, anyone could drive over it currently, and we would have little to no recourse.
Yep, that's fine. I just want to make sure, because we have reverter clauses on many other properties, so thank you.
Right, and this is slightly different than that, for sure.
Any additional questions for the Community Development Director? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. So I guess there's currently a structure on the rear of that property, it looks like on Google Maps. Is that still there?
I believe there is a shed, yes.
Okay. And so are they looking at replacing, I'm trying to kind of gauge what we have for drawings here. So the drawing, are they going to look to put a garage like directly behind the house? Like, because this driveway just sort of nubs to an end. It's not flowing all the way through the property.
Right, so they're not proposing to construct a garage on our property the right of way. They're proposing to construct a driveway to access the back of their property, so that, yes, a garage would then in theory go behind the house in between them and the property Thorncrest to the north, which would be permitted under our code. They would have to follow the accessory structure standards outlined in our zoning ordinance, but they could likely have a 680 minimum, probably larger than that, square foot detached accessory garage.
And that would in no way impact if we were to reclaim the property and use it as a roadway?
No.
I mean, they would obviously then have a driveway that connects us to the roadway.
Right. They would do a curb cut and an approach off of the existing, what we would then create as a road.
Right. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, what are they using for their setbacks? Is it the property itself? I mean.
For a garage, they would be using the property itself, their own lot setbacks.
Property, okay.
So it'd still have to be, it's 3 feet from the property line.
Okay. I do share what Mr. Gearbaugh mentioned in that I don't like making one-off agreements like this because we have had other instances where we have new leadership, we have new councils, things get forgotten, and then all of a sudden, there's an issue that, oh, by the way, we did actually have rights to this, and we've lost them. So I'm concerned in that we're giving access to something that I don't know that we should be doing, because we're traversing our own property. Is this going to open up a door to be able in another circumstance to do the same thing, that somebody else can say, well, I want to connect through your property to my property?
It would have to be similarly unique in the fact that it was previously platted as a roadway. So I would say that we're not really setting a formal precedent by doing this. And I think in the context of the situation, similar to granting a variance or looking at a site plan review, you're kind of looking at the situation in its totality. By agreeing to this, it would not leave us open to have to make an agreement with somebody else against our will as a community, so.
Okay. The other piece is that we don't allow gravel driveways in the city, do we?
We technically do, yes.
Okay, technically do. That's a phrase I don't care for. Can you explain what?
Right, so there's nothing that strictly prohibits you from having, we refer to the driveways as paved driveways, but in actuality, from an impervious surfaces perspective, which is not something we don't have a code against, so to speak, there's no difference between a gravel driveway and a paved driveway. In fact, there are many gravel driveways in the city that have not been brought into compliance and that will not be brought into compliance.
So, but we're creating something that's not in compliance, is what you're saying?
It's neither not, nor it's just not specifically called out. Would I prefer our code to be more clear and specifically allowing them? Yes, but have we established a precedent of the city as allowing them? Yes.
And so are we making it clear as to how the length of this driveway, or is it based on wherever they decide to put their garage?
Well, again, the cost of that length would be borne by the applicant themselves. So no, there is not a specific.
So theoretically, they could make it all the way to the property line for Thorncrest?
I would have to review the specific agreement, but potentially.
Okay. I guess I just want to understand some of the other pieces to this pad that they're showing that there's cars parked on currently. Is that staying? Is that?
It's city property, so the homeowner, the applicant, 345, did not install that existing pad. That would be effectively a road, just as anything. They're more common. I've seen this type of, that little divot more commonly on lake properties in other communities. It's very often used as like a fire truck turnaround or as a means to do that. So in this specific context, people are effectively parking on the street when they are parking there.
I'll stop there.
Any additional questions, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just one. Was any title search or anything done on this to make sure there wasn't a pre-existing?
I did not conduct a title search. I would leave that up to the homeowner to do.
And that's kind of my question. Did the homeowner do that prior to us creating something that may already exist if it's already?
Since there is not a driveway, I would sincerely doubt that it existed. We could always bring it back and have them do that, though, if that would be the council's preference.
Just my concern is that, considering when that was built and how that was done, that I'm surprised that that house was built that way without any kind of consideration for access to the back of that property. But it could be.
If there are no additional questions, we do have a motion on the floor moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon, simply to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve? Or if you word a motion appropriately, the chair would be happy to consider it.
Move to approve.
Moved by Gearbaugh, moved by CO to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Rice. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? No? All those in favor?
Sorry,
Go ahead.
So as Mr. Gearbaugh mentioned about this title search, what's going to happen should there be something that's already on file about this property after we make a decision?
We could revoke the license immediately and again, the applicant built half a driveway, how the agreement is written, that you could essentially tell them they have to take it out. It's designed to protect the city maximally and not to get us into a situation of reversion or something else like that. But again, I don't see that as the case, and I think the homeowner likely did their due diligence prior to approaching the city for such an agreement.
Any additional discussion? It's been properly moved by CO, seconded by Rice to approve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it, the motion carries 6-1. We move on to new business item 24-88, ordinance number 865, downtown sign code revisions. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Community Development Director Harrington and to adopt or not to adopt ordinance number 865, downtown sign code revisions.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge, seconded by Dillon. Mr. Harrington, would you like to begin?
Absolutely. So this is an item that we brought originally as a discussion piece where we talked about electronic message boards, projecting signs in the front of buildings to not limit it to the first story. And projecting signs are signs that go like this, not signs that shoot light. So just to be clear, projecting means pushing out of the wall, because that also came up at planning too. So electronic message boards was brought as discussion, projecting signs for non-first floor downtown businesses, as well as projecting signs in the alleyways. And then I added a couple of other minor tweaks to the sign code that were related to the temporary sign ordinance that came up as discussion points with businesses in the last year. So the Planning Commission ultimately chose not to take action on electronic message boards in the downtown. They did not find them aesthetically appropriate for the downtown. If that's an issue that council would like to revisit, I would encourage a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. As for projecting signs, they were supportive of allowing them to be slightly larger in the downtown, as well as allow them non-exclusively for first floor businesses. So second story businesses in our downtown would also be afforded the ability to have a projecting sign. They're already permitted in a smaller fashion. They're not widely used. I think it adds a little bit to the visual dynamic of our downtown and provides business owners a little bit more opportunity for varied types of signage without overshining, so to speak. Importantly, although it would allow a projecting sign to be 16 square feet either side, so a total of 32 square feet, it would still be bound by our building sign code standards. So for each 1 linear foot of tenant space that they have, and I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you, they'd be allowed 1 square footage of signage is how that currently is written. And I think even in our downtown, it might even be half a square foot. I would have to double check on that specific ordinance really quickly. So it doesn't increase the maximum amount of signage, but instead allows a varied type of signage that I think would add to the downtown's character, and evidently the Planning Commission thought so as well. And then for a second projecting sign in our alleyways that I would hope would allow for some more alley activation. The folks in Leather Bucket Alley are somewhat uniquely positioned since they can't hang anything off their fire escape. The signs that are under Murphy's Crossing for Mod Squad, for Max, et cetera, are permitted as they're a different type of sign than a projecting sign. So it just allows a little bit more, allows additional signage in the back. And then lastly, for temporary signs, we're just clarifying that both sign faces count, and that's how you calculate the total area. So if you have a 16 square foot banner that's two-sided, you're using 32 square foot of your allotted temporary signage, just to be clear.
Very good. Thank you. Good synopsis. Mr. Gearboz, the formal rep to the Planning Commission, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that was pretty clear. I mean, planning was direct on not wanting to extend the electronic signs downtown. As for the other aspects, I think we're pretty straight. Mr. Harrington and I were discussing one thing, which was the width of a projecting sign and how that might be interpreted, because looking at the examples, we had the optometry, the former optometry or current optometry sign, which seems to be quite wide, and then when you look at the other ones, how does that play out into the calculations, I guess?
Yeah, so there's no specific regulation for width, but since we chatted about that, similar to the sign the library just proposed, if they put something on the side of it, so if it's a wide sign that has their message on either side, and then they do even an address down the spine of the sign, the width area of it, that would be counted as additional sign area. So they would still be counted against them essentially for their overall signage area, which would then prohibit them from having potentially another building sign or something to that effect.
Okay. Yeah, other than that, I think planning was pretty direct on moving forward with this.
Yep, I thought we had a very good discussion, and I believe the vote was unanimous, and I'm very much in favor of moving forward with this revision. Are there questions for the Community Development Director? Let me jump to Mayor Pro Tem Dillon first. Mr. Gearboz, and if you have an additional question, we would welcome that.
Thank you. So the packet was a little bit voluminous, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear as to what we're voting on here.
Absolutely.
Because it's not outlined in the actual motion. So what exactly, is it what is highlighted in that one document? Is it everything that's highlighted?
The highlighted are all the changes, yes. So you'll also see something there related to electronic message boards, and that was simply for future staff to specifically name the zoning districts we allow them in. Currently, it's in commercial and industrial districts. Our downtown is a mixed-use district, so when you're talking about something that is commercial and residential, it got a little confusing. So to just kind of set the issue of interpretation aside for future staff members, just specifically delineating the districts as well as making our illumination standards clear. But then, yes, everything else that highlighted is something I've already spoken about. There's projecting signs, the size of the projecting signs, the removal of the first floor requirement, the addition of a second projecting sign in the rear of the lot on an alleyway, essentially, and then the slight clarification on that table related to temporary sign allotment.
Okay, so let me just start then where I've got a couple questions. So when we talk about display signs, electronic signs that they're currently allowed in some of our commercial districts.
Commercial and industrial districts.
Okay. And they can change once every 15 seconds.
Yeah, and that's remained unchanged from the.
That's right. I guess what I'm trying to understand is where it says display of messages shall be limited to those services offered on the property and time temperature display. So services, does that also include products? And I guess I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, so essentially, it's taking a portion that's already in our on-site, off-site temporary or sign aspect, so that's not part of that packet in front of you because it's a different section of the sign code.
Okay.
And just making that abundantly clear that you can't use your electronic message board as an advertisement for off-site things, which is, we're very limited in what we can and can't do about speech, but the Supreme Court has been very clear that you can regulate the difference between on-site, on-premises signs versus off-site, off-premises signs. So what defines a billboard, essentially, versus a regular sign advertising or identifying a business or a service they offer.
Okay.
So potentially products, so, a bar, if they had an electronic message board, could potentially say they're selling a Corona or a Coors Light, that could be featured on the sign because it's related to the activity occurring on the premises. But if I'm saying, hey, go check out our location in Ypsilanti, or go check out our location in Belleville, or I drove by an electronic message board to remain nameless that did exactly that, and that this ordinance, we already have one that protects us against it, but this one makes it a little bit clearer to businesses.
Okay. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. And then size is the one piece that I'm trying to, size matters on this one, and trying to kind of understand, because when I was looking at, and it might just be because of the way and I think this is what Mr. Gearbaugh was just talking about. So when we say 16 square feet, that's per side?
Yeah, that is
So
correct.
that's a 4x4?
Yes, potentially 9 feet off the ground, protruding no more than 5 feet off the wall.
That's a pretty big sign, like right over somebody's head.
I think when you're standing on a curb, it's notably less large than you think it would. So for example, the existing Smokehouse 52 sign that somebody else was saying is much larger than that allotment. So there's no way that it's about 32 square feet per side. So it's 64 square feet total. And then it has that additional little piece that comes off that used to have a little arrow on it. That's an additional 6 square feet. I think that the square footage seems a little deceiving when you consider a 4x4 is not quite as big. It would be like waist high to your legs, maybe are surrounding you. It's more like a cardboard box, really, than it is.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure, because, and then I'll move on to temporary signs. And did we at all address the number of temporary signs?
Yeah.
And the mechanism is, okay, so we'll start with the number of temporary signs.
Yeah, so we did not in any way alter any aspect of the temporary. It was kind of outside the purview of this update. I'm happy to do another one, but this one was simply just to clarify for some businesses that if you have a banner that's two-sided, we are counting both sides of that banner as part of your overall, you're effectively taking the same benefit that a projecting sign gives you, that you get signing on either side of it.
Right. Because I do think that we need to revisit that number 8. I think that's too many signs. It really just turns into a cluster of signage, and I don't know that we really looked at it until we saw it. I mean, you don't think of it till you see it, and there were some businesses that have done it where they've just stacked their signs.
Right, and that's during election season. Technically, it's an allotment to allow us to not touch the issue of speech, but essentially provide for an understanding that it is a time for political messaging, effectively.
But we're using it, there are instances in where it's being used outside of that purpose.
Yes, because we can't, according to the Supreme Court, limit the purpose of the temporary signage.
Right, so I just think that we may have to have people choose how many people they want to support and look at it a little bit differently. So, okay, I think I can stop there and yield the floor to others and see if anybody else has.
Are there additional questions for Mr. Harrington? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just one clarification. If there's 2 businesses, how many projection signs do they get? If you have more than 2 businesses, how many projection signs could have in a business on the outside of a building? So say you have 2 retail businesses in one building, and you have another business on the second floor, how many projection signs are they allowed on the front of the building?
They could potentially have up to 3. Again, though, I think if we had a large concern about this with many people using it, it's more expensive, it has its own design clarification or qualifications. It's not for everybody. It really is meant to afford more people more. But yes, in theory, you could have 3, just as you could have 3 building signs.
So there isn't limitation in total
On the
square
total,
footage for signage? You could have 3 signs, but as long as it doesn't exceed.
it relates to the tenant suite. It doesn't necessarily relate to the overall footprint of the building, no. So.
I just want to clarify, because at some point you could become quite proliferated with signs if that should happen, but we'll wait until that comes.
Right, and I think that's honestly what happened with roof signs in the community too, which is why eventually they became banned, and now a non-conforming thing we have removed when we can, so.
So no additional questions. We do have a motion on the floor moved by Gearbox, seconded by Dillon, simply to acknowledge receipt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to adopt or not to adopt?
Move to adopt.
Moved by Lesh to adopt. Is there a second? Seconded by CO. Is there any additional discussion? Then we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Last new business item is 24-89, MDOT maintenance contract. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from DPW Director Searles and to approve or not to adopt a 5-year agreement with MDOT maintenance agreement.
Move to acknowledge, approve, and adopt.
Moved by CO to acknowledge, approve, and I think it's adopt and approve, isn't it? Yeah, adopt and approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gearbaugh. DPW Director Searles.
This maintenance agreement with MDOT is the typical one that we've been entering for multiple years. This allows us to get some reimbursement for the light maintenance issues that we have along Michigan Avenue and in the right-of-way. It also allows us the control to get these items done instead of waiting for them on their program jobs. I think the overall agreement is pretty light and reasonable, and we should have it so that we can get our reimbursements and take care of some of the issues that pop up.
Easy enough. Are there questions for the DPW Director? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
Thank you. First, there's one comment, it talks about, we don't have bridges that MDOT covers, correct?
No.
Okay. That was one question. And then, do they notify us if they're going to be doing work?
No, I mean, not like, they don't ask us to do work.
Okay.
Sometimes, Janet, not all the time. Sometimes they just
Because I know that, yeah, we've had
Large
issues where they
projects-
just sort of show up.
Large projects, we've been in the loop. We really have, but the small stuff, not really. They do have some resurfacing going on this year, east of us. I'll get you guys an update.
Awesome. And then my only other question was, there was a comment or a section 21, that talks about trees and shrubs, and it says that they will pay to have dead trees removed. Do they pay to have trees replaced?
No. But we do have 20 free trees coming from DTE. Woo-hoo.
Well, that's
On top of our normal.
So, yeah, I mean, I didn't know that that was part of it. I think that's great. And then there's also a section that talks about compensation for aesthetic work items. And I was like trying to figure out how we can parlay that a little bit. Like, apparently they pay for us to clean the streets. They pay for like litter pickup, things like that, and mowing.
Not a lot more than that, but I think I see your angle.
So, I mean, I'm going to keep pushing on that third island.
Yeah. Oh, we have some, you'll be surprised.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any additional questions for DPW Director Searles? Mr. Gearbaugh.
Just how have we taken benefit of this over the year? I mean, it said in there's a couple things where you have to meet with them bi-monthly and some of
Yeah.
that stuff. Has that all been happening?
Yes, yeah, we stay on top of this. They actually, when they first switched over to the computerized system, they said we were their best customer. Priscilla did a great job of learning how to work that system, because it used to be all correspondence through email, paper, and physical. But, yeah, we stay on top of it.
So to clarify, when you said there is no bridge, even the bridge over the Saline River is nothing that we maintain
I
for them?
don't know if that qualifies, I might have misspoke. I do not think that qualifies as a bridge. I believe that's a culvert. I don't believe that qualifies as a bridge by their definition.
sounds like that's something that MDOT would do. Okay, I was just curious to know how much we've actually taken benefit of the other aspects, just as Mayor Pro Tem said.
Do you want me to throw that to city manager for you guys?
Just have an understanding of what we kind of.
Yeah.
Like a 3-4 year?
Yeah.
Or we'll look back for the last contract, the reimbursements?
Yep, that would be
Okay.
helpful, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Mr. Searles, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If there's no additional discussion, we do have a motion on the floor moved by CO, seconded by Gearba to acknowledge, to approve, and to adopt. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We come now to the discussion portion of the agenda. We do have some rather substantive issues to deal with this evening, so I'd ask you to exercise some brevity. We'll start with reports and other announcements first, and I'll begin to my right and end to my left. Councilmember Lesh, any reports or other announcements specifically from boards, commissions, or committees?
Just one, the Arts and Culture Commission is going to move our June meeting to June 13th, just so we can make sure we have a quorum of members.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Seal?
No, the April meeting of the cemetery board was not held. It was canceled because of, well, two reasons, frankly. Not much business going on and couldn't get a quorum.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
The Wellness Committee had a cursory initial meeting. We looked at some materials I had provided that were programs that other communities are currently working on to kind of develop what we think our program's going to look like. It was a great initial meeting. We're going to now incorporate in some stuff from the Health Care Committee and kind of start moving forward.
Very good. Mr. Gearba, any reports or other announcements specifically from boards or commissions?
Planning Commission will be meeting this Wednesday to discuss the library's pavilion pedestrian plaza, and then also discussing Beach Roads' project on Saline on Arbor Street, the former flame shop.
Very good. Councilmember Rice, any reports or announcements?
Yeah, first of all, the DEI committee, unfortunately, we need to cancel our meeting this Wednesday. We're going to push it off until May the 15th. But the reason that we are canceling it is a good one. We have been participating in the community listening sessions for the Saline area schools. Many of our members have joined us. I was able to attend the first one, and I look forward to attending the next 3 that we have upcoming. The Parks Commission's been really busy. We have had 2 Friends of the Parks meetings. So far, we held one in Mill Pond last month and in Brecken, which ended up having to be moved to the rec center due to foul weather. But really looking forward to getting that committee going. We're focusing on tools and identifying and removing invasive plants throughout the parks and other cleanup activities that folks are really interested in. We also planted a tree recently with the mayor as well in Brecken Park, and it was in honor of Mr. Rockwell. We had Girl Scout troops 4962, 4919, and 4833 join us and teach us about Arbor Day, which was wonderful. They had a lovely song that they sang and taught us about Arbor Day. And the Parks and Environmental Commission did a joint walk through Salt Springs Park where folks were available to help identify native plant species and other things within the parks, which was really cool.
Very good. Thank you. Councilmember Harmount, any reports or announcements?
Yes, last Thursday, we had a zoning board of appeal meeting, and we had one item on there was for the signage for the library, and the exception was voted in favor of the deviation from the current standard.
Very good. Thank you. If there are no additional reports or announcements, we'll transition to South Ann Arbor Street truck traffic. I believe, Mr. Gearba, you had requested that this item be added as a discussion item this evening, and I think the chief will have some information to share as well, but you may begin.
Yeah, I believe this is the concern that was mentioned earlier, but we've had citizens, and in fact, a citizen contacted all of council to discuss the issue and concern about heavy gravel trucks and those things, knowing that the road has a weight restriction on it set upon it by the county, I believe.
Okay. So I started looking at this, doing some research on the truck traffic, and it appears it's been an issue for quite some time. I located the memo from Chief Button that was put out in 1999, the traffic attached to the traffic control order regarding truck traffic on South Ann Arbor Street from Henry to South Saline city limits, prohibiting truck trucks in excess of 10,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. And in this memo, it states, as a result of said investigation, I do hereby direct that, and then it talked about the weight of the trucks. So where I'm a bit uneasy about this specific TCO is I can't locate this said investigation. I've asked to look through different records. I can't find this investigation. So my question is, should this order be limited to in excess of 10,000 gross vehicle weight? Because when you look at a normal school bus, that can be 10 to 15,000 gross vehicle weight, and they are on our secondary roads quite often in subdivisions, et cetera. In looking back, I also located some correspondence from the then York Township supervisor, dated 2015, asking for a meeting with city council members to discuss the truck route.
That occurred, Chief.
Okay.
With the then director of the Washtenaw County Road Commission.
Right. And I located a memo from former Chief Button to the mayor and city council in which a new traffic control order was generated prohibiting all trucks exceeding 10,000 pounds gross vehicle weight on Willis Road between Saline Milan Road and easternmost city limits. And this was based on residents complaining about the noise they make and the damage they do to the roadway. So having said all of that, I mean, I'm just looking for the next steps in this. Are these restrictions due to the damage to our roads, or are they due to the noise? The residents not liking the noise? Because my question is, why would we restrict this to South Ann Arbor and not North Ann Arbor as well? If it's the noise, why wouldn't we just have this throughout the entire city, I guess? And what makes this, my question is, this 2-block stretch of roadway any different than, say, North Ann Arbor or anywhere else within the city? So as the chief, you know, when we stop a truck or issue a citation, more oftentimes than not, I'm the one getting the phone calls or somebody stopping up here, and they're asking these questions, the business owners. So what am I supposed to tell the businesses that depend on these trucks making deliveries? I don't know if we should have a traffic study done, or if I can get some answers as to whether or not our roads can withstand this, and if they can or cannot, where, I mean, I've called Larry numerous times to try to figure this out, and there's really nothing documented, so.
Fair enough. Mr. Gearbaugh might be able to address some of your questions and concerns. Do you want to continue, Councilmember Gearbaugh?
Yeah, if I recall right, there is Washtenaw County Road, there is a map that identifies that road, and it has been for at least since 2017 or even further, that they have identified the truck routes in this county, and that road is not one of them.
Am I allowed to talk now or no?
No, this is.
Yeah, unfortunately not.
This is my first meeting.
No, it's all right. There'll be a second public comment period at the conclusion of our discussion portion.
Okay, so my question was, I'm not sure how that made it on that map. Was it due to our traffic control order in 1999, or?
And that's the question that I was always under the impression that was a county decision to put that on there, because the decision to make where the county's putting cars throughout the entire, or these trucks throughout the county, is a combination of road commission and, I guess, the local communities.
Okay.
That's easy enough to find out, and we can certainly send a message or make a phone call to the road commission tomorrow.
But the other study that was done in 2015 was clear that that was a concern, is the truck traffic, the frequency of the truck traffic. You know, we see buses maybe once, twice a day on that road in the morning and at night. Gravel trucks and cement trucks are running every 15 minutes.
And the problem I have is also with the sign, because I followed a truck in, and the sign is on the other side of Henry Street. So once the truck passes Henry, where are we supposed to direct them to go? They're stuck. So, I mean, we would definitely need to have better signs prior to getting across Henry Street, because it goes from Henry to Willis, and that sign is right after Henry.
Right, and there was some similar signage that was up that wasn't put back in place when the roads were redone 4 or 5 years ago. But also, we have similar type of truck routing throughout the community when we deal with Maple Road and instructing trucks to go down Maple, then to go down North Ann Arbor Street in some cases. So there's precedence throughout this community. I just think that maybe we need to reaffirm it, because the concerns that are coming from the neighbors, especially in that neighborhood and historic districts, are that this is causing damage. And we have seen proof of damage uptown based on the trucks that are coming from MDOT and have filed concerns and, lawsuits against them. So whatever we need to do to make sure that this consideration is done. And just as our DPW director mentioned tonight, that kind of truck and damage on our residential street, which that is primarily a residential street, not a commercial avenue, is a primary concern for those neighbors living there.
Chief, what direction do you need from us in addition to making contact with the Washtenaw County Road Commission to confirm the point that you and Mr. Gearba just articulated? Is that sufficient for the time being?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe we can plan to have a follow-up discussion at our subsequent council meeting on the 20th.
Okay.
Very good. Appreciate it. There's nothing further on that particular point. Director Searles, do you want to make some obligatory comments on the 2024 spring hydrant flushing initiative? Which, to start, just to confirm for our residents and business owners, that program has been completed.
Done.
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Done. I know, just confirming, you guys got a lot of data in your packets. Those are all what's on the, most of that is what we see on the website. I've been working with the water challenges since I hired in. I want to just highlight real quick, a quick kind of timeline. This is, some of these dates predate me. 2005, we got a water plant. 2008, we had a staffing, hiring freeze. 2018, there was a large water main break. We've all heard about that or lived through that, where the system was depressurized. I highlight that point because that seemed to be an area of focus for the problem that we were having clearing the water up. We did some water main lining on Michigan Avenue, and we got some kind of temporary relief on that, I guess, north of Michigan Ave in the industrial woodland area, but it didn't last. I thought it would, but it didn't. One key element of this is the loss of well 4. We all know about that, and the really long timeline for permitting for Eagle for getting that back online. What we found this year, we brought in DPW, senior staff, foreman, senior staff from the water plant, their superintendent, and Craig is an assistant superintendent. Colleen was in the room. We brainstormed something to try something different. We came up with a plan. I don't know how, I didn't know then, no one knew then how successful or hard it was going to be, but I can tell you, as getting stuck working one of the shifts, the reduced numbers of starts and stops in this flushing, I was working with someone that had worked a lot of flushing that night. These hydrants, as we were leapfrogging from one to the other, was just clearing up so much faster. We were going, what were we doing? 3 shifts of 24 and then another 12, 36 hours. And the plant did what they said they could do and kept up with us. The biggest snag we had in this flushing period was the stretch when we hit Michigan Avenue and a lot of the commercial area. The backflow preventers that are in there, that are required to be there worked. And they perceived a loss of water. They did not have a loss of water. What they had was their side of that backflow preventer was at higher pressure temporarily as that water was flowing through. We know the water was coming out of the hydrant because it was shooting across the road. We know the pressure was there, but because we were stressing the system out, the RPZ worked exactly the way it was supposed to do and stopped the water. It wouldn't exchange water. As we went down the road, 2 hydrants down the road, everything returned back to normal. What we learned from that is we don't have to do that when the business is open. We can make sure that the shifts line up, because we were able to actually finish almost 2 full shifts faster than we thought we were. And we're calling them shifts based on the man hours from during the week, overnight, and then consolidating them on the weekend. So going forward, this has turned out to be a tremendous flush. We flow tested for the hydraulic model this week. Not this week, last week, because this is Monday. Last week, my office didn't receive a call. The last time we did that, if you guys want to jump in and look at our citizen reporting tool heat map, in 2021, when we tried it, we got absolutely lambasted for doing the same operation. But we did this year without any issue. I really believe, and I will tell anyone that wants to listen, our rehab of those sand filters was the largest contributor to this success, and the new plan of consecutive hours, less start and stop times, and when we did backwash and refilled the towers, we were keeping the water clean. I praise the guys for being flexible. I appreciate the plant for bringing in their ideas. I'm sorry, one more stumbling piece. Mayor, we had a lot of calls on Friday before we started flushing. We were filling the first week. The plant was filling the towers to its max level, so we had the most water to start with. I was unaware of that was happening during business use, and it really hurt downtown. We will not repeat that mistake. We will not repeat that.
So you were making reference to the complaint that I lodged. I was actually with Mr. Harrington for lunch downtown and talked to several downtown business owners that day who were struggling with poor water quality for about 2-3 hour period there.
Right, and it didn't clear up the whole time while they're filling. So we'll be able to do that off peak when they're closed, and we'll be able to hit the Michigan Avenue corridor off peak when they're closed. And I think we just basically saved ourselves 30 hours of man hours. And I really believe our flush was great. In talking with American Soy, I left out the swear words, but best flush they've had since he's been there. So
very good. I'll work my way right down the dais in the event that there are any questions or comments. Mr. Lesh, any questions, comments for the DPW director?
I think it's great.
Okay. Mr. CO? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. I think, there's some great lessons learned with this experience. We learned that deferred maintenance is not a positive thing. Those green sand filters should have been replaced many, many eons ago. I will say that, I think that we can refine this a little bit better. I did get a frantic call from the dog groomer who was in the middle of grooming dogs and had no water and literally had to run to Bush's and buy bottled water to finish getting shampoo out of dogs. So we definitely need to do something in which businesses are notified, whatever time we're doing it, but we have to make sure, because we had restaurants that were impacted, both downtown, on the east side, we had businesses that were impacted. So I think we can find ways to make it work a little better. I think the other issue is understanding what that time frame looks like, because, I played laundry roulette and I lost, I'll be honest with you, because I did laundry at 5 a.m., and it ruined a load of my laundry because I thought I was beating your start times. And so I think we can try to figure out how to better communicate that, what it looks like. And I know that after the first weekend, we were able to tell people, hey, even though we're not in your area, you may still have an impact. So we need to understand that. The weekend thing, I got to be honest with you, was not a good sell for community members. So maybe doing an overnight that's during the week or something like that, because, you're never going to make everybody happy. I get that. But at the same time, there are people that are like, yeah, I work all week. Weekends are when I do laundry, and I have to do laundry. And so kind of trying to figure out how we can figure out a better system for it or less impact on people.
Okay.
Mr. Gearbaugh, any questions, comments?
Just a couple of follow-ups. Are all our valves working? Were there any issues with valves or anything at the point in time?
Right now, after doing that, we know of one valve that's tweaked and it's stuck half open, and that's the only one. That's the only valve.
So our whole inventory and everything, so we've got them all able to be exercised and handled lovely?
Yes, they're all noted on the GIS and everything.
Great. One of the things you mentioned in here about the backflow preventers or whatever, did we have any other issues anywhere else? The farmhouse had it, and it's leaking significantly.
Yes.
I reported it. We're
Here.
dumping okay.
Here, so we found, I talked with our contractor, Alltech, today. He found a lot of sand in the seats, Dean.
Okay.
A lot of sand that we've pushed through the system. I think we'll have to get those fixed and then hopefully never have to send sand in again.
Is that a concern for any of our other businesses that have that we need to inspect those? Or?
I haven't had any calls. I know this building's is really old watts, which is a good backflow preventer. But yeah, we got to replace it.
Okay, just to clarify, the one at the farmhouse is leaking at least 5 gallons of water a day.
Did anyone report
No,
that?
I reported it. Yeah,
heard
they
anything.
reported it supposedly, and the guy came out and looked at it, and I reported it too on our reporting tool.
Oh,
with photographs.
Okay, I'll talk to Jack and see if he's in town.
Okay.
Alltech is in town, Dean.
Yeah, it's just leaking significantly, and I don't want to have any more water damage in the
No,
basement.
we don't need that.
Thank
We
you.
don't need that, for sure.
Councilmember Rice, any questions or comments?
So I want to counterpoint my colleague, Ms. Dillon, a little bit here, because I feel like this was the most thorough report that I've read, and I actually would like to use this city manager tool as kind of a precedent for reporting to council when things happen, incidents, good things, bad things, your system flushing report to us. It answered all of my questions before you even had to stand up here today. I commend all of the things that you sat down and you thought about, and I understand that things pop up. But I think as a whole, the fact that you're saying this worked, and I'm looking at you and I'm seeing the excitement in your eyes because this worked, I am not going to sit here and nitpick the fact that we did have a couple of complaints. I absolutely understand the couple of complaints that we had. You understand them. You're talking about them. You're bringing them up in front of the public. I am relying on you to, as the expert, to go out and try things and make things better for this city. And as a council person, I will not sit here and say, change this because I think, as a council person, that overnight would be better. If you're going to stand there and tell me that weekends work better for multiple different reasons, I'm a little upset with the things that have been said toward you today about your processes and all of the things that you're trying, and us as the non-experts sitting here and picking it apart. I don't find it appropriate. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, Councilmember Rice. Councilmember Harmon, any questions or comments for the DPW director?
I do have a comment. I really do like the approach of the reflection and the countermeasure and moving that forward. I think that I agree with Councilperson Rice that that is a good process to always be looking at where was the breakdown, where we could have improved for next time, and make sure that that gets implemented in the process next time. So, good job.
Thanks.
Mr. Schrills, thank you very much. And please convey our thanks to your subordinates and colleagues as well. We appreciate their work on this initiative this spring. Thank you. We're going to move on to the second to last discussion item, Leather Bucket Alley. I'm going to need some help with this. Who requested this be added to the agenda? Is that city manager?
This is me.
Okay, it's all you.
So we have a number of parties that are interested in use of Leather Bucket Alley this season. Historically, the city has entered into $1 lease agreements for use of the space behind an individual building or perhaps behind multiple buildings. The question has come up whether we want to continue this practice or simply explore some sort of public amenity in Leather Bucket Alley that may or may not subsequently become a part of a social district, or even if it doesn't become part of a social district, could just simply be a part of our downtown amenities or gathering spaces. So I wanted to just kind of throw this against the wall and see what council's thoughts were before I dug too deep into changing any existing policies.
Can I ask one quick question? So I'm assuming the entities who are interested in using the alley are restaurants adjacent to the property. Is that correct?
It's really all the property owners of the restaurants, the 109, White Pines, and to a certain degree, I think some of those businesses would appreciate a more public use rather than attempting a private use. So that's part of the issue is there's kind of a mixed interest in it this season.
Well, let me start out. I have no, if there's something that we can do that will benefit the downtown businesses, I'm all in favor of that. At the same time, I think it's worth exploring the opportunity of doing something a bit more holistic for the public's benefit. I don't, you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see us doing the latter or developing a plan or executing said plan this season. Probably something that requires time and energy and something that could likely be executed in 2025, unless you tell me I'm wrong.
We already have existing extra picnic tables from when the city provided a public portion in Umbrella Square. So we do have some existing equipment we could repurpose quite quickly. If that was all we were seeking to accomplish, was some public seating in that space, I don't think it has to be overly elaborate. Certainly in the future, if we wanted to make it more engaging, that opportunity exists. But our DPW is already maintaining the lighting in the alley, so it's really not that much difference. And again, if it becomes a social district, we would be responsible for maintenance of it then as well.
I'm not opposed to any of that. The reason I mentioned that point is if we can't get something off the ground in the next 2 or 3 months, I see no reason why I would oppose some sort of more finite, limited lease agreement with some of the downtown businesses to use that space during these summers.
Yes, and when we lease, it's always just for the season.
Okay, so those are my thoughts. Mr. Lesh, any comments or thoughts on this matter?
I'm more for, opening it up to the public too. So, I mean, whatever it takes to get to that point. So.
Okay, Mr. CO?
Do we have to, I guess I'm kind of puzzled a little bit here. Does letting one person use it mean exclusive use to them, or can we share the usage?
So technically, the way the lease agreements are written, it's supposed to still be for public use, but I think historically, the city has not enforced that, and so it has turned into a pseudo-private use in those cases.
I see.
Because it remains a public alley, anything that gets put out there by a private business should technically still be free for a member of the public to come use. But it's obviously created some issues because that's a asset of a private business on a public alley. It may be more clear-cut to just put a public asset in a public alley.
Okay. All right.
Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree. I think it should be a fully public space that all of the businesses can enjoy. It's going to be very difficult to quadrant it off, especially when you're talking about businesses that serve liquor, because there's special requirements of they have to have their area fenced in, and it's hard to pass through, and it just gets a little convoluted. I'd like it just to see it as a fully public space.
Okay, thank you. It's clear. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Same thing as public place, space. In the past, when there was only one individual interested in using it, I was fine with that, but we knew this day was coming, and so at this point in time, it needs to accommodate all the businesses that want to use that at this point. So whatever we can do to add some tables or whatever. The one thing I want to make, are the lights repaired?
I believe the equipment has been purchased. Director Searles, do you have an update on when the Leather Bucket Alley lights are being installed?
I don't have it on this week's schedule, but they're here.
Okay.
All the light packs are here to replace.
Why don't you just confirm those details with the city manager so she can...
For this group, there's a switch. We need people not to turn it off. Sometimes the light switch is flipped. Somewhere in there's a light switch, and I'll get that. I'll find out, and I'm going to tape it closed.
Yeah, because I know there's been a lot of back and forth between individuals from Main Street and everybody trying to figure out why they're not working or when they are working.
They're not broke, they're broke, they're not broke.
Right,
Yeah, we
so-
need the switch to be left alone.
So I'd love that to be resolved so we don't hear any more concerns about
Confirm
that.
that detail to the city manager so she can disseminate it via one of her weekly communiques. Councilmember Rice, any thoughts on this?
I'm all about it being a public space and keeping my fingers crossed that we can get a social district worked out this year.
We're working on it. We'll have something to present to you all on May the 20th. Cool. Councilmember Harmount?
I don't have anything further.
Okay. Seems like
my
you have
direction,
consensus? Okay, very good. And then the last item, per the speaker at the top of tonight's meeting, I had spoke to the individual. She wanted to be able to address her concerns to city council this evening. Hence, we added it as a discussion item, affording her the opportunity to speak at the beginning of the meeting. City Manager O'Toole, I had wished, or I guess I hope that Community Development Director Harrington would still have been able to attend to address this matter. Do you have any comments at this time?
No, I will follow up with Community Development Director Harrington and the Building Department to identify what opportunities there may be to consider changes to that ordinance, or if there's just simply a more streamlined way for us to process these type of requests.
Okay. And I'd also note, because I couldn't help but overhear a conversation that Councilmember Lesh had with Community Development Harrington earlier tonight. It sounds like the first policy subcommittee of City Council will likely convene next week. So if this is an issue that requires a policy change or modification, it could certainly be added to a forthcoming subcommittee agenda. Okay.
May I request we have a summary of what this whole issue is first, so that we understand it from the perspective of the...
Certainly, yeah, I can ask Ben to write something up.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, if there's nothing further, we come to the second public comment period. Under the Open Meeting Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, Council, and friends, I rise again. I'm compelled to express my feelings first. Thanks very much for the leadership of our police chief, control the traffic, and also thank all of you. Saline City does have less traffic. However, we have the problem. Eastbound towards the city called Saline have a bottleneck right there when you are up to the hill, and you were blocked by this unfriendly middle of the block. I have to say, tear down that middle block. It's useless. I don't want to follow Ronald Reagan, tear down this wall, but that block is not useful but troublesome. So I have some other things to talk because of that is the old-fashioned, charming city of Saline. Saline, look at the future, open arms to the west. Where can people come back again? That area, what I'm talking about, Mill and US 12, is not good. Got to follow the example of Ann Arbor. Make the traffic more friendly. So that's one thing I like to know, the traffic record of that. Second thing I want to say is I want to first beg the special attention of Hammer and Gerbach and Lech about what the problem we have to solve, the pothole. I really like Gerbach talk about the proactively solve that problem, material management, other things. However, beyond that, we got to talk about the strategy. Basic problem, not just past a pothole in America, is asphalt. Asphalt made of petroleum. And also, it is not good anymore. So the solution, we have used technology. Earlier I mentioned about the LIG, which is laser-induced graphite. If we have the cat tape polymer and have a laser, you can produce so many things. When I'm talking about graphene, what is graphene? Nanotube, bucketball, diamond, graphite, same thing, carbon. So if we can have something to do that and just follow 1870, the inventor, Belgian inventor, invented asphalt seed put in there, but that's asphalt. But belong, you have to use all other things. Nowadays, we can use the technology easily. So,
thank you, Cheng Ming.
Have two topics.
Yep, appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Are there additional comments this evening? You'll have 3 minutes. Anyone who'd like to speak, you're welcome to come forward.
I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions.
You certainly may. I usually respond to the questions, though, at the end of the public comment period, but please ask.
To the comment about that to make it easier to request, is that in reference to request an exception or approval by City Council? Because I do want to make a comment that when I spoke to Mr. Harrington, he told me that really this approval for a natural outlet was only for like HOAs and people, or, larger or groups, and I don't know that that's reasonable, and from my research, I don't think that that is accurate, that it should only be for HOAs. I think that the concern for polluting stormwater, is with everybody. So that I just was wondering about that, if that's, and then if I needed to take any additional action.
I've got your contact information, so we will make sure to follow up with you by the end of this week.
Okay, thank you for your
Thank you,
time.
Jessica. Yep, appreciate your attendance this evening. Thank you for raising this issue to the city council level. We appreciate that. Any additional citizen comments this evening?
Mary Hess, and there was very interesting on the, as far as potholes and what we fix them with. Now, years ago, when I was on the Planning Commission, we would have different classifications of streets, and residential streets only had to have certain amount of repair, and it was not as much as a major street. I would think that that still is the same. And then years ago, when we looked at Planning Commission or developers, possible developers, we could even put aside that you need a park besides decel and acceleration. And the trucks that were heavy with things, they had an auxiliary road to where it was not. Some of those trucks are tearing up residential streets badly. And we used to have a load limit on residential streets. And of course, the South Ann Arbor, when we have developers come in and they have trucks with their whatever, it's terrible on the roads. And I would think that if they need a variance, and most everybody needs a variance that's building of some sort, that it's possible that we would have understanding with the city and the developer that they would either repair the truck traffic or really wonder as far as the truck traffic and their load, because residential streets do have load limits. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. Are there any additional citizen comments this evening? Please.
Yes, I have a couple. So the thing I find, interesting is you said that South Ann Arbor Road was restricted by the county. That is a city street, so that is no more.
That's not true.
No, I know it's not the truth. And then the reason the York Township had the no-through truck limit on there, and they removed that after they paved the road and the bridge was fixed. So it's a truck route to nowhere. It's a Class B road to nowhere. I mean, you're asking a vehicle to spend an extra 20 gallons of fuel to go around a 2-block thing. And you guys want to say that's green? I'm just trying to make a living, trying to build this community. I drive through it every day.
We appreciate and understand your perspective, and as we indicated, the police chief is going to follow up on a few issues, and we will revisit this matter in 2 weeks, on May the 20th. We appreciate your time this evening, and thank you for your comments. Any additional remarks this evening? Again, you're free to talk about any issue at this time. Clerk Royal, I failed to mention this or ask this question earlier. Did we receive any written comments in which the individual wanted their remarks read at this time? Easy enough. Then we're going to proceed to a motion to convene into closed session to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute, in particular for the purpose of conducting a personnel evaluation pursuant to MCL 2681A, and to consider an attorney-client privilege memorandum exempt from disclosure pursuant to MCL 15.2431G. And this motion would be to convene into closed session at 8:54 p.m. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Gearbaugh to convene. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. The clerk will please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes, and we will reconvene at the conclusion of closed session. And the chair would entertain to reconvene into regular session at 9:58 PM. Moved by Gearboss, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. The clerk will please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. We move on to our final business item, which is 24-90 FOIA appeal. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the appeal of denial from Lucas Larson of M Live and to reverse the disclosure denial, reverse the disclosure denial in part, or uphold the disclosure denial.
Move to acknowledge and uphold the disclosure denial.
Okay, that motion is properly moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Lesh. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? And I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. If there's no additional business to be brought before Saline City Council this evening, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn this regular meeting at 9:59 PM.
So moved.
Moved by Gearboss, seconded, was that Lesh?
Yep.
Thank you, sir. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.